Welcome back, everybody, to Still a Part of Us. I am Winter, and I'm so grateful to have Danielle here with me today to talk about how she has navigated this time after she's lost her baby, Lydia. First of all, before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. This conversation is going to be full of triggers. So, we are talking about infant loss. We're talking about stillbirth. We are talking about grief and actually pregnancy after loss. So please do not watch this episode if this is something that would trigger you and be too difficult to listen to. We just want you to be safe and happy. And well, I mean, you can be sad too, but just
Yeah.
be safe. We want you to be safe. And if you are just joining us for the first time, please consider subscribing to this podcast or this channel. We are a community of lost parents and we are trying to help and support each other. So hit the subscribe button. That helps us out. That helps other people find us as well. So, Danielle, thank you again for coming on. If you missed her birth episode, I encourage you to listen to it. It was really nice to hear about Lydia and
Thank you.
to honor her in that story. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing Lydia with us.
Absolutely. It was my honor. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, most
Mhm.
definitely, most definitely. So for some context and background, can you tell us how long ago Lydia was born
Yep.
and what happened to her?
Sure. Lydia was born about 6.5 years ago on October 13, 2014. She was stillborn at 30 weeks pregnancy and after a picture perfect pregnancy, but we lost her due to an umbilical cord accident where the cord got really tight around her neck and her right ankle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was very, very unexpected and very heartbreaking. She was our first baby and the daughter who, we love and miss very much every day.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry. Just it's so unexpected and devastating. And yeah, there's nothing more to say. Just I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's been 6.5 years. How has that looked for you? How has that grief landscape looked for you?
It's been full of lots of ups and downs. Grief is really crazy, I've found over the years, especially as more time goes on. I've learned to live with the grief a lot better. Of course, early on, it's like all consuming for so long,
Mhm.
but now it's just kind of like a part of me, and I've accepted that. And it has its ups and downs. I definitely have a lot more good days now
Mhm.
than I did, after we first lost Lydia. But there are still times where like something comes up and it really triggers, the fact that she's not here or triggers something that, we experienced around the time we lost her that, it just makes it feel so like raw and fresh again. So it's crazy that, even as so much time has passed, like there can still be those moments where it feels like it just happened and like I just held her. And one funny thing I've found about grief, even like kind of early on, like in that first year,
Mhm.
it's like I get more upset the more time that passes because it's like it's been so long since I got to hold her. So it's almost like I feel like those memories are getting further and further away from me,
Yeah.
like that feeling of holding her. And, I can still feel her against my chest, but it's like now that more time has passed, it's like it's just hard to accept that that was even longer ago and like the memories are not as fresh as they once were.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of a hard thing.
Yeah.
But, I guess every day is another day closer to being reunited with her in heaven one day, I
Yeah.
believe. So there's that part of it too. But yeah, grief's been crazy. And we have had two other babies since then and actually have another one on the way right now. So
Congratulations.
yeah. So after Lydia died, she was our first baby, and I just felt so empty. Like, I mean, I'm sure every
Mhm.
mother who's lost a baby feels so empty, but it was so hard to like return home to a quiet house. And I was just so devastated about that and like so desperate to have my baby in my arms. And like, I wanted Lydia,
Right.
so it's not like I just wanted any baby, like, I really wanted Lydia, but at the same time, I'm like, I just wanna, have a baby here to hold. Um, I just felt that so desperately, and, we talked about, trying for another baby pretty soon after Lydia died. because another part of me was also just, like, scared, like, since she was our first baby, I'm like, "Are we ever gonna have a living baby?" Like,
Oh,
I was so scared it would never happen for us, so, like, I wanted to, like, hurry up and, like,
make sure you could
figure
have,
out, like,
yeah.
are we gonna be able to have a baby, like, to bring home? So we started trying, like, the doctor suggested, like, we wait 6 months, but he said, like, after 3 months is really, like, the minimum, so we started trying about 3 months after Lydia passed away, and it took, like, a few 3 or 4 months, but then I did get pregnant, about 6 months. I guess it was I think we found out in, April,
Mhm.
so about 6 months after
Yeah.
she had passed away that we were expecting another baby. So, that was just absolutely terrifying experience, like, I was
Mhm.
happy on one hand and terrified on the other hand about, is something gonna go wrong with this pregnancy?
Yeah.
So that was just, pregnancy after loss is just its whole own experience. I was terrified the
Yeah.
whole time from the very beginning. I was in and out. I had a wonderful doctor. I found a new doctor, and she was, like, so understanding and let me come in all the time, like, even early on, like, I
Great.
kept coming in and
Just
getting
checking.
like, "Yeah, like, can you check my hormone levels? Can you check this? Like, let's make sure
Yeah.
everything's good." Like, I was a crazy person, and we did have a scare at, 11 weeks, like, I was close to the end of the first trimester. My husband and I went to the airport with our first rainbow pregnancy. We were going to Virginia, and I went to the bathroom, and, like, I was bleeding
Oh.
heavily, like, all
Oh.
of a sudden and having cramps, and, we left the airport and went to the hospital thinking for sure we had a miscarriage, but lo and behold, our baby was still there with a strong heartbeat, and we both just cried and later learned it was a subchorionic hematoma, like
Mm.
a blood clot type of thing that can
Yeah.
cause bleeding, and it can also cause lots of extra anxiety that pregnancy after loss moms do not need.
No, yeah, and it does happen. I mean, like, we've had a couple people on, and it's concerning. It's scary. Scary.
Yeah, for sure. So that was, like, the big scare with that baby, and we found out it was a boy, our son Luke, who's now 5.
How'd you
So
feel
that
about,
was
yeah, I was gonna say, how'd you feel about having that, like, a boy? And
yeah, that, if I'm completely honest, and I feel so bad saying it, especially because I love my son so much, and I
yeah.
wouldn't change him for
Yeah.
the world,
Yeah, of
but it
course.
was really hard for me to accept having a boy after Lydia died. I think it was just kind of, like, in my head, I don't think I could fully take it all in, like, it was just really confusing and hard, like, it was only 6 months after my loss that I was pregnant again, like, I'm still, like, deeply grieving and anxious and confused, like, so much going on, and it's like I'm yearning for Lydia, and I also want, like, another girl because Lydia was a girl, but I really want Lydia, and then,
Yeah.
but then it's a boy, and I'm like, I was struggling with how to feel about that. Like, on one hand, I was so grateful because it made the pregnancy more different,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is making it like that made it a little bit easier. I feel like if it had been a girl, like, I would have been even more terrified, if that's even
N
possible.
no,
But
yeah, yeah.
so I did, I had a little bit of a hard time with that for a while, but ultimately, what was most important was just having a healthy living baby.
Mhm.
So that pregnancy thankfully progressed without any issues, and due to our stillbirth with Lydia, our team of doctors, like, I was seen by the OB and then the maternal fetal medicine specialist, and
Oh, great. Okay.
yeah, they monitored me very closely throughout that pregnancy, especially in the 3rd trimester, twice a week, biophysical profiles and on stress tests. So I felt, pretty good about that. Like, I felt good at the time that I was in there for my monitoring. And the time in between, I was like, is everything still okay? But I was very good about counting my kicks in that pregnancy. In that time after Lydia died, I actually had become an ambassador for Count the Kicks, which is a nonprofit organization that educates expectant mothers about the importance of monitoring your baby's movements during the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and why that's so important, and how a change in your normal's baby or in your baby's normal movement pattern in the 3rd trimester can signal a problem. So I had found that organization, and I became involved with that organization. So I was a Count the Kicks ambassador. and pregnant after loss. So I was
You were
using my Count the Kicks app all the
all the
time. I
time.
was fully educated on the importance of it and how to do it. And,
I
that's kind of,
Yeah, I think that I just want everybody to know that that is a really, if you are an expectant mother, this is something that you really should get on your phone. It doesn't
yes,
take very long to do. I
right.
think it's 10 minutes, or like basically until you get 10 movements. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, there's an app, Count the Kicks app, and yeah, once you're in the third trimester, you pick around the same time each day when your baby's typically active, and you just track how long it takes for your baby to do 10 movements, like kicks, punches, jabs, rolls,
Mhm.
anything like movement, not actual hiccups, but like movements. And you track how long that takes. And over time, you'll see a normal pattern for your baby. And if their normal time to reach those 10 movements changes significantly, if it's a lot slower than normal, or even like if it's like a whole lot faster, those can be warning signs. And those are definitely reasons to contact your provider and get monitoring. I mean, chances are everything could be fine, but it's definitely better to be safe than sorry. And by counting kicks and using that app, you'll get a chart of like how long it takes. You'll have that quantifiable data to show your doctor, and then you won't be guessing like, is baby slower today?
Yeah.
Because you'll have your record of it.
Yeah. It's a
So
really
it's
nice
such
little
a
app. Yeah, I used it with our this last pregnancy and
oh good.
with our son Felix, and I that was one thing that was actually really surprising. I that's why I'm glad you said this, but I was expecting like, oh, if he has decreased movement. That's what it was
Hmm.
in my head. But it could be increased movement too,
Right.
because you mentioned during the birth story that Lydia was going
Yes.
crazy probably the day that she
Yeah.
maybe got a little bit more tangled up in the umbilical cord or something.
I know.
I'm not totally sure, but that has been kind
Yeah.
of a pattern in some of our interviews is where they and the mom like felt a lot more movement, like
Hmm.
crazy movement that is not normal for that baby and the time of the day. And
Yep.
so that was surprising for me to learn that when I was counting kicks this go around.
Right.
So
Yeah, most people would not expect that, but it does seem to be kind of like a common theme in a lot of the stillbirth stories I've heard. And I definitely wonder that about Lydia, since that night before we found out she passed, she was going crazy. And I'm like, yeah, is that when she, you know, got
something could have,
tangled up?
yeah,
Um, but anyway, yeah, the app, it really doesn't take long to do. I mean, it's going to be different for every baby, how long it takes for them to get to 10 movements on average. But I know, like with my son Luke, and then with my other daughter Lila, my second rainbow pregnancy, I was usually able to get my 10 movements in like 5 or 6 minutes.
yeah,
Like it's not like you got to sit down for like an hour to do it
no,
every night.
yeah.
At least not typically, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. I think that's really cool that you became an ambassador and like searched out more information to help you. Did that feel
Yeah.
like that was a little bit of semblance of control or trying to figure out what happened after she passed away?
Yeah, yeah. So after Lydia died, once I was kind of like settling in back home, I took some leave from work. I was, in no state to return back to work. And just spent time like Googling stillbirth. And I'm like, how does this happen? Because I had no idea like perfect pregnancies with healthy mothers can suddenly result in stillbirth. Like I was baffled.
Right.
And I was shocked when I saw like a 1 in 160 pregnancies end in stillbirth. And anyway, through my research, I came across kick counting and somehow landed on the counttthekicks.org page. And I was reading about it. And these 5 women in Iowa who've all lost babies, they started the organization together based on research that they had seen in Norway, where the stillbirth rate decreased.
Yeah.
So they brought it to the US. And then on the page, like I stumbled across, they were looking for like volunteer ambassadors. So, for me, when Lydia died, like one thing that was so important for me and still is to continue to honor her in as many ways as I can and like carry her legacy on. That's just something that like is really, really big for me as her mom. So I was like, sounds scary to me to get involved in this, but this is a great way to honor Lydia and to help save babies because I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Yeah.
I want everybody to know, like, I didn't know. And I truly, truly believe if I had been counting Lydia's kicks and, like, knew that her movements changing and her not moving that day was not normal, like, I could have gone to the hospital, possibly. I mean, I don't know for sure, but she could have been saved. Like, if I had gone in earlier Sunday, was
Mhm.
she still alive at that point? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had reached out to that organization and they're like, "Yeah, we're looking for ambassadors." And they were actually having a training in Iowa, like not long after that,
Uh-huh.
like 6 months after Lydia passed. I had actually just found out I was pregnant with Luke when I went. Like, I traveled to Iowa and went through the training to
That's
become an
great.
ambassador. And I met these other ambassadors who, most of them had lost babies themselves.
Mhm.
Some like have baby safe stories, but I know we talked before about finding your tribe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these people are my tribe. Like, just when you find other lost moms,
Yeah.
you just connect so easily and it's such a great support system. And I just met all these women I never knew. And it was just, I don't know, I felt so supported being there and like I knew I was in the right place and doing the right thing. So
That's cool.
I was really glad to be involved in that. And then, yeah, it was a big, big part of my pregnancy with Luke, too, for sure.
Which is great, which is great. So when, you went back you took some time off from work right
Mhm.
after, did you take 12 weeks or did you just end up kind of like, "I'm gonna make sure Luke gets here okay and hang out at home," or whatever?
Yeah, so after are you asking about after Lydia
After
died or
Lydia died,
after
yeah.
Yeah, after Lydia died, I took 6 weeks off of work, so
Okay.
I went back in December, I believe, or I don't know, like, right around the New Year.
Yeah.
So I was already back at work before I even got pregnant with Luke. Um
How was that going back to work? Were people at work okay? Did they know?
Well, yeah. So thankfully, I work with like the most amazing people. They're all super caring and supportive. And I do work remotely. So I work from home, but I, travel from time to time as well. But everyone was super supportive and told me, like if you need to take time, in the middle of the day, like do it, like do what you need to do. So
That's great.
that was helpful,
Mhm.
and being able to work from home was helpful
Yeah.
because at least, like, I wasn't having to be around people and, like, lose it in the office, like, I could just walk down the hall and lose it
Yeah.
privately.
It's good.
Um, yeah, so that in a way was good, but also, I was just in my house all by myself every day, my quiet house, and it was just, kind of I think it made me even more depressed, just being there alone every day when I should have been having a baby,
Yeah.
to take care of.
Yeah.
So it had its pros and cons, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I spent much of that time off just kind of researching and trying to. Oh, actually, I should say, I was going to say, like, trying to understand what happened because I was doing that, but also I had started blogging at the time,
Mhm.
like writing letters to Lydia in a blog format. And that was like super helpful for me and my grief. And it was a way for me to share about Lydia. Like, I would share my blog on my Facebook page. And I think it kind of opened a way for other people to not like understand because nobody can understand
Mhm.
fully without going through it, but I think it kind of helped people to know a little bit more about where I was at and how I was feeling and that kind of thing. So the blog was helpful for me, like just writing, like I felt so much better when I would write to her and felt so connected to her. But I also found it helpful to even share that, and everybody's different. Some people are super private and that's
Mhm.
totally okay.
Mhm.
I wasn't like super private and I thought it was helpful because I feel like people were really supportive of me, which I needed. I was hearing from people that I hadn't heard from in years, people reaching out and offering their support. And, our family was great, our siblings and parents and best friends. Like, we had a lot of support. But I think through all of that as well, you also kind of notice like who's not supporting you.
Oh, that's
You
interesting.
quickly figure that out as well. And,
Yeah.
you know, over time, those people take more of you
A
know,
back seat. It's fine,
a
right?
back seat in your
Yeah.
life because they weren't there when you really needed them. But
Yeah.
so I blogged a lot while I was off, and the weather was really beautiful during that time, here in the South Carolina, like it's not really cold in the fall. It was just like that nice, cool,
That beautiful.
pretty
Yeah.
weather. So like we had a hammock in the backyard and I would just lay there and like kind of look up to the sky and like think about Lydia in heaven. And always be these yellow butterflies like flying around
Mm.
that I don't know, it's just like special. I'm like, oh, like tying everything to Lydia. I'm like, Lydia's up in heaven, like dancing around, like I don't know,
Oh,
the butterflies, like
yeah.
everything, everything beautiful made me think of her.
That's great. That's
But that's how I spent my leave, was just like reflecting and
mhm.
crying,
Yeah, so much crying. Like,
crying nonstop and feeling shocked and miserable, but also really just trying. I don't know, I feel like I noticed things a lot more after she died, like noticed like the beauty in life too after she
mm,
died, like just everything reminded me of her, everything beautiful reminded me of her. So like that was kind of like a nice part of it, but if that's even the right way to put it. Anyway.
yeah. I know it's yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes we need big things like this to happen for us to stop and notice stuff, so which is
Yeah.
not the best way of putting it, but yeah, that's kind of how I felt after
Yeah.
Brandon passed away. Yeah, you just see things differently and
Yes, for sure. Some things in a good way and some things
y
maybe not so much,
yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
definitely I know for me and probably for you too, it's like there's a before and after. Like I see pictures of me, I'm like, that was before
Yeah,
Lydia died. I see pictures of me, I'm like, that was that. It's like two different lives almost because your life just changes
you're just
drastically
you're so
in that
different.
instant.
Yeah, you're so different
Mhm.
after that. So you are 6 months after and you're pregnant with Luke and you're terrified.
Mhm. Yes.
So you went in quite a bit and got checked and it sounded like you had a great team that was really trying to take
Yeah.
care of you and make sure you were good.
Yes.
How was his birth? Was that just something that was um it's such a crazy experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pregnancy birth
It
after loss is like crazy.
yeah.
So also,
Yeah, that was terrifying again. Like I was so scared something was going to happen. They did induce me at 39 weeks. That was like the earliest they would induce me unless like
mhm.
something else was significantly wrong. But they induced me at 39 weeks and everything went pretty smoothly. I do know like when he first came out, like I felt like he didn't cry like right away. Like, I was like waiting, like there was like that
Oh,
second and I was like getting terrified, but then he just started screaming so loud.
and you're like, "Okay."
Um, yeah. He was an angry baby. Um, he really was. He was so red. He was, like, so mad when he was born, like, he did not wanna get out of there, like, "Why are you taking me out of here?" And my husband did he says that the cord was around his neck. I didn't see it,
Yeah.
but I guess they, like, unraveled it. So that was a little unnerving to hear. So I don't know if that's why, like, it took him a second to cry or not. I mean, it wasn't, like, that long, but it
No,
was
no.
long enough for somebody who's been through loss to, like, have to
No.
wait.
Yeah.
But he was healthy and everything went well. So, yeah, it was just, like, surreal to have a living, breathing baby in my arms, and, we saw so much of Lydia in him,
Mhm.
and that was, really nice to see. And we had her pictures there with us,
Oh, good.
at the hospital, and our Lydia bear, our
Yeah.
weighted bear that Jonah's cousin made for us, that weighs 3 pounds, 8 ounces like Lydia did. So, we felt like she was there with us. And what's really crazy is so Lydia was born on October 13th, and then Luke was born on December 13th.
Oh,
So the same date. And then our rainbow baby after Luke, Lila, she was born on November 13th.
whoa.
Yeah. So
Goodness.
all of our 13th
I
babies,
know
I'm always like, this is like a sign from Lydia. I don't
yeah.
know. I just always look for these little like signs
Me
and
too. I totally do that too. So yes,
things.
yes,
Yeah.
I think that's cool. That's great.
Yeah. It's really nice that they all kind of share that date in common. But yeah, I mean, bringing Luke home, it was a wonderful thing and it was also really hard.
Mhm.
it had only been just over a year since Lydia died, and I was still like, I felt like being pregnant so soon after she died, like, really made it hard for me to like fully grieve because I was so distracted by my anxiety,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes.
So it's like I hadn't, I don't know,
Full
I was in
like,
a really
fully
rough
grieved?
place, to be honest. Like, to the outside world, they're like, "You're probably so happy you had this baby at home." And like, I was, but I was really, like, looking back, I know I had like postpartum depression or even just like depression and grief,
Mhm.
like everything going
On top
on.
of it.
I was in a really bad place for a while. And I like didn't want to take anything because I'm like, I'll be fine. Like, this is just grief.
Mm.
But looking back, I'm like, I should have probably tried to, help take something to help, because I was just having a hard time. But at the same time, Luke was, he brought lots of joy to our life that we really needed
Yeah.
and gave us those sleepless nights that we so longed for with
Right.
Lydia.
Right, isn't that funny? Yeah, you long for those
Mhm.
when you don't have them.
Yes, for sure.
We are experiencing the first 3 months of our parenting after loss, and it
Yeah.
really is you are so excited. You're so excited, you're so happy and so joyful, but
Yeah.
then there's, like, this layer of guilt too. Like,
Yes.
you just you're like, "How can I be so happy when I'm missing somebody in
Yeah.
my little family?" So, yeah.
Right. Your family never, like, feels complete, and then also just seeing the baby, like, go through
Yeah.
the milestones and things like that, that you never got to see,
Yeah.
that was hard for us too. The one reason we picked Luke, it's his name means, like, brings light,
Mm,
and I just think that's so true for him, like, he brought and still brings, like, so much light back into our lives that we really needed. We'll always have our pain from Lydia not being here, but he, has helped to heal. I always feel weird about saying healed because, like, to me, healed is like when you're completely better, and I'm like, we'll never be completely better.
no.
But like, I feel like he's brought like a lot of healing
Yeah,
to our lives, and he's an amazing boy. So,
that's great. After you lost Lydia and you had become a Count the Kicks ambassador and you kind of found your tribe, found your people,
mhm.
were you going to any other sort of like grief support groups or any therapists or anything to during that time?
Yes, yes. I did try a couple grief therapists, and
Mhm.
I did not have the best experiences. There was one I went to who, I was talking about Lydia dying, and toward the end of the appointment, she like gets out her wallet and is like, "Oh, look at this picture of my new baby granddaughter." And I'm
Oh.
like, did you not hear what I just talked about for the last hour? So that was just one poor experience, but I don't know, I just had a really hard time finding a good grief therapist at the
Mhm.
time, but I did have a really great support group. They have one down here through one of our hospitals in Charleston, and I had gotten involved in that, and that was super helpful. Again, being able to connect with other lost moms and dads, mostly moms, not a lot of dads really attended at the time,
Mhm.
but that was very needed in my life at the time. So I always recommend support groups to other people who are going through loss. But, some people like it, some people probably not so much. But it was really helpful for me, even to like not just to talk about like all the grief and everything like that, but some of them were further out than me and like had another baby. Like, so, it was like glimmers of hope to see too, like in other
Mm.
lost parents.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful. And after Luke was born, I found, like, another therapist who specialized in grief and talked to her, so that was, like, a year after Lydia
Mhm.
died, but she was a lot more helpful than the prior therapist.
You gotta
So I
shop
went through
around.
that for a
Yeah, I was
while.
gonna say you gotta try out those therapists and counselors.
Yeah,
They're
for sure.
not everybody's a good match, so
No. No, but I like so now it's been 6.5 years, so I don't do that support group, like, as often anymore, but I do try to, like, hop in there sometimes just to, connect with or offer support or advice, and, that's how I met my friend Emily, who's, like, one of my best friends now, who's also a lost mom, like, I just feel like having those support groups is so vital because people understand what you're feeling, and you can have a deeper connection with them than you can with people who have not been through the experience.
Yeah.
Um, I also was in like support groups on Facebook. There were like stillbirth support groups, like, that was, like, my lifeline,
Yeah.
that first year after Lydia died, like, I connected with 2 girls in particular who were, like, my best friends, like, my best, like, virtual friends, like, I had
Yeah.
never met them, they were in other states, but we like, one was Kim and one was Holly, and we messaged each other every day after we connected because we had lost our babies at the same time,
Mm.
and we, understood what each other was going through, and then we also went through pregnancy after loss at the
At the
same
same time,
time.
really? Oh,
Yes. So we would always be like, "I'm so terrified," and it's like, "Oh, me too." Like, we were like
you were in it
they
together.
were I am so grateful for that. Like, I don't talk to them as often as I used to, but, like, they are always gonna, have a special place in my heart,
Yeah.
and I even got to meet one day. One lived in Canada, and she came down to Myrtle Beach, and we got to, like, meet, and
Oh, that's great.
hopefully I'll get to meet Kim one day, too. She's up in Massachusetts, or New Hampshire, not Massachusetts, but
Yeah, one day that should happen.
I know.
Yeah, that's cool. That I know. I was gonna say I feel like there's a lot of resources. And I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that a lot of these grief support groups are online. They're all virtual nowadays,
Yeah.
right now. And it is
Yep.
you can jump onto any of those. It seems like there's a lot of
Yeah.
resources, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. I was so grateful to find it because, like, I just felt like I couldn't survive without it. Like, I needed people to talk to who,
Mhm.
like, could understand. So that was huge for me.
You mentioned Emily before. So, this is Emily actually came on the podcast early on. And so I will link to that in the show notes and in the description box so that you can listen to that because you guys are in the same area. And I think you guys met
Mhm.
at one of the grief support groups, right?
Yeah. Yep, we met at the one through the hospital. Actually, like, a yoga instructor, I had taken yoga when I was pregnant with Luke, to try to help with my anxiety,
Oh,
and later, Emily did it's like a, yoga during pregnancy type thing, so
hmm.
Emily went through it before she lost Margaret, so that yoga instructor had reached out to me once Emily lost her baby,
Oh,
and I'm pretty sure, like, I don't remember if I had given the yoga instructor the grief group information to pass on to Emily or if she found it on her own. But regardless, she found the grief group and I ended up going, like, to offer my support. And Emily and I just started emailing and then that turned into texting and then like now we text each other every day.
yeah,
So and she lost Margaret almost 2 years ago, 2 years ago next month
yeah.
to stillbirth as well. They didn't really have a conclusive
Mm-mm.
reason, but she and I have really, connected on that level.
I appreciate those kind of connections. You guys do the Walk of Remembrance for your hospital or your
Yeah.
area, right? Um,
Yeah.
in October, usually.
Yes. So shortly after Emily and I met, there used to be a Walk of
Mhm.
Remembrance hosted by the hospital, and then they had to stop doing it. Like, I guess they just didn't have anybody who was like willing to, or who had the time or resources to continue it. And I was so sad because I'm like, this is like one of the only ways that we all get to come together each year and like honor all of our babies. So I talked to Emily about it and I was like, I wonder if we could start like our own walk. And she was so fresh in her grief, but she was like, yeah, let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
she was willing to help me. So I was like, okay, like, as long as I'm not doing it on my own, let's do this. So we started planning a walk of remembrance. We call it Walk of Remembrance, Miles for Margaret, Lydia, and All Babies Gone Too Soon. And we started that 2 years ago, and we decided to do it also as a fundraiser for Count the Kicks,
Yeah,
um,
which is great.
because yeah, that organization is so important to us. So we're like, we can honor all of our babies, and we can also raise money to help prevent stillbirth. So we had, a really successful turnout the first year, and the second year was even more successful, which is crazy because that was during COVID and it was virtual. So we are planning to do that again this year. We don't have a date yet, but yeah, we usually do it early fall. We like to do it in October because of Pregnancy and Infant Loss
Mhm.
Awareness Month. So it may be early October. However, I am pregnant again and due around that same time. So I'm not 100% sure. It may be September, or maybe the first weekend in October this year, but
Yeah.
we'll definitely share like the Facebook page and everything that people can follow
Yes,
for
yes, for sure.
updates. We do like an in-person walk. We didn't last year with COVID, and I'm hoping we can do one this year.
Mhm.
But we also always open it up to like anybody across I mean, anybody anywhere who wants to walk and honor their baby and put their baby's name on the back of the
The
shirt. I know
shirt.
I love
Yeah.
doing that. Like
Yeah.
anywhere I can put Lydia's name, I'm like, sign me up. Yeah, we'd love to have anybody join us and help raise money for Count the Kicks with us as well.
Yeah, I will put links also for that in the show notes in the description box because I think it's so
Thank
cool
you.
what you guys have done. I
Yeah.
just think that in general, like you said, anytime we get together and talk about our babies, it's like it's
Mhm.
great. It's a wonderful opportunity. And then what you're doing
Yeah.
for Count the Kicks, because I'm like all about that too. And I was like, oh, maybe I should become an ambassador for that or
You
something.
should.
Because I'm all about it. I was like, do
I'm
you have
gonna
the app?
recruit you.
Fine, do it. Let's do it.
You're in Utah, right? I'm
Yes, and
like,
I don't think there's
I don't
anybody
think
in
we have
Utah.
one. Oh,
Yeah, I don't think so either.
signing you up.
My friend just my friend Lindsay, who we had on the podcast also, she just became an ambassador for Idaho. So I've been
Sweet.
paying attention to what she's been posting. It's kind of fun
Oh,
to see all that.
nice.
So
Yeah.
they are doing great work. So if you guys need a place to donate money or to
Yes.
we can save some of these little babies. So
Yeah, for
using that
sure. That's the goal.
education exactly. So I do have a few things that I'd like to ask you. I know that loss can be so taxing on a
Mhm.
marriage and other relationships in general, right? I like,
Yeah.
with friendships and other things. I'm wondering how you and Jonah have done with the loss. Like
Yeah.
how has that been for you guys?
Yeah, it was really hard. I mean, I don't feel like, or I guess I'm trying to think of how to answer it. Like, I feel like we did get closer in a way, like
Mhm.
afterward, just because we went through such like a traumatic experience together and we were both just so devastated. So it's like in a way we like drew closer to each other, but we also grieved very differently. Like my husband is like very hands-on kind of guy, like wanting to be in the garage and stuff. And I know after Lydia died, like he was like building shelves in the garage. It's kind of like that was how he
Oh.
like kind of, like working on things or like things to like keep him busy.
Mhm.
And I was more like the one who, just needed to sit and cry and stuff. But he was always, and he still is always very supportive of me. Like he always wants to know, like if I'm having a hard time or if I'm struggling, so he can be there to support me, which I appreciate. I will say I'm not the best at always letting him know. Like sometimes I'm just very private about like when
Mhm.
I'm feeling down. I don't like to share it, but he always wants to know because he wants to be there for me.
Yeah.
And he's always just been super supportive of like the count the kick stuff I do and like the walk and wanting to help and support me and honor Lydia in that way. So that's been really nice. But yeah, like I feel like we do like grieve in different ways, but we're very supportive of each other. And yeah, I guess that's kind of
It
kind of how I would put it. I mean, I feel like over time, I think I struggle with things more now than maybe he does, like in
Mhm.
terms of like maybe I have those like fresh grief moments more than he does
Mhm.
at this point. But again, he's still very supportive and wants to honor Lydia just like I do. So
That's great.
that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that is super helpful. And just even acknowledging that we're different people, right? And that's how he handles things
Hmm.
and how you've handled things or it's just different. So it's not wrong, it's just different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
Um,
this is the part that I kind of enjoy actually quite a bit. I was going to say, was there anything that anybody did or said to you that really stuck out to you as being super helpful that you appreciated they said that or helped you kind of move through a part that was difficult during your grief?
Yeah, there were people who, just said like I'm here for you and just showed up and like our small group that I talked about
Mhm.
last episode from church, like they would just bring stuff over like food or like, just jump in to help or some neighbors did that as well like without asking like what do you need? But then another person that was super helpful for me was my best friend Nancy.
Mhm.
She wouldn't say, like, the cliche things to try to make you feel better, she just always let me know that she's there, and, like, she just went above and beyond to help me honor Lydia, and she still does, but, like, Lydia was due in December, we lost her in October,
Mhm.
and when Lydia's due date approached, she, like, completely surprised me, she, like, reached out somehow to, like, our family and friends and arranged so that people started sending us, like, anything with, like, angels on it,
Oh.
At Lydia's due date, yeah, like, I kept checking the mail, and every day we'd get, like, a new, like, like a willow tree, like, angel sculpture or, like, the most beautiful things, like, people were having, like, their kids, like, draw, like, angel
Oh,
pictures, and it was just the sweetest thing, and I'm so grateful she did that, and, I'm so grateful for everybody who participated in that. Like, I now have, like, a whole curio cabinet with, like, angels in it
uh-huh.
that people have sent us back then, on her due date and over the years, just to show us that, they were thinking of Lydia and thinking of us. So that's really just been the most helpful. Just her or anybody, like our family members or our close friends, just saying, like, I thought of Lydia today, or I saw this and it made me think of Lydia. Like, that's what's most important for me is just knowing that she is remembered, she is important to other people too, and that, her life, her legacy carries on. That's what's been biggest for me or
Yeah.
most helpful for me.
Yeah, just the remember them and
Mhm.
say their name, say her name. So,
Yeah, just say Lydia, like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I was at the doctor recently, and they're like, in my new pregnancy, and they brought up something about Lydia, and they're like, "I'm so sorry, I keep bringing this up," and it's like,
No, don't be sorry.
"Don't be sorry, like, this is something that I think about all the time, so it's not like you're just suddenly reminding me of something."
Mhm.
And I am happy to talk about Lydia anytime you want, like,
Yeah.
it's not they have such a different perspective.
Yeah. I think they're just worried. Everybody's always just a little bit worried that they're gonna say something wrong and bring it
Yeah, I
all
mean,
up
it
again,
makes
and you're
sense.
just like, "This is yeah, I'm living with this.
Yeah,
This is who I am now." So,
yeah, for sure.
and on the flip side, is there anything that you would recommend not saying, to,
Yes.
maybe a lost mom or a lost dad? And that could be when it's still very fresh and also
Mhm.
later, now that it's been a little bit longer, if there's anything that you would recommend people not saying
Yeah.
as time has passed on.
I mean, it's just those things like people said to me early on, like, oh, like I remember I went to get a manicure with my mom and I told the lady doing my nails what happened. She's like, oh, well, something may have happened later that, now she's been like saved from that. Like, maybe she would have been gotten really sick. And I'm like, what? Like things like that. Like they're trying to make it like, oh, well, it's a good thing it happened because something worse could have happened. I don't know. It was so bizarre and horrible.
Yeah. Huh.
Or, just, things like that that really kinda downplay it or where other people, they're trying to make themselves feel better, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
Those things are not helpful, and, there was something else I was gonna mention. Oh, like, "You can have another baby,"
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
is a common one, which, yeah, like, I wanna have another baby, but and I do have, Luke and Lila, my rainbow babies, and another one on the way, but these babies are never going to replace Lydia. Like, Lydia was her own person, just like
Mhm.
Luke and Lila are their own people.
Mhm.
So that's just not helpful. It's almost more of a stab in the heart than it is helpful.
Yeah.
So things like that. But I try to be as understanding as possible when people say things like that. Just like, they're trying to help. So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but those things are not helpful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, you just are like, "Okay, whatever." You just move on because
right.
sometimes they
Yeah,
just
like, please.
yeah. You can just say, "I'm sorry." That's always good.
Yeah, yeah, just say you're sorry and that you're there, or just show up and
Yeah.
bring things and send things, like, and yeah, say the baby's name or send something with the baby's name on it. Those things are the most powerful for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Danielle, this has been so fun to talk to you and fun. Yeah, it has been fun. I don't it's one of those things where we're like, we're talking about a really difficult
I
topic and but
know.
it's been really delightful talking to you actually.
Well,
And
thank
so
you. It's been nice talking to you too.
I really appreciate you coming on. And I actually wanted to ask you if you had any last little bit of advice or anything that you would like to share with anybody about Lydia too.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of advice, I would just say, even though your baby's no longer physically here, you can still, keep them very active in your life. That's something we've done in our family, whether it's including her in a picture with a Lydia bear or doing things to honor her, like the walk or raising money. I think we can still very much parent our babies, even though they're not with us. It's just in a much different way and not in the way that we would like to. But I just encourage, other lost parents to find ways that work for them to do that. I mean, it may be
Mhm.
something more private. Not everybody is open to different things, but find, what works for you and ways that you can continue to keep that baby's, spirit alive in your family. And then the other thing I would say is just try not to compare yourself too much
Mm.
to other lost parents, which is something I'm still working on.
We all
But,
do.
like, I'm connected with a lot of lost parents now, like, through just online and grief group, and some of them are, like, doing things all the time, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm not doing enough, like, to honor my baby," and, so just, we're all different, and we all love our babies,
Yeah.
like,
You do you.
equally.
Yeah, yeah, you do you. You figure out
Just
what.
because you're doing more than, or you feel like somebody's doing more than you are, just try not to get too caught up on that, and do what works for you and your family and
Yeah.
what makes you, feel connected to your baby. And the neat thing I'd share about Lydia, I would just say that I'm just so grateful to be her mom, and I wouldn't trade it in the world for anything in the world. Even though she's not with us and I wish she was, I'm just so, so grateful to be a mom to her. And I really think she's a special little girl, and it's just an honor to share her little legacy with other people. And yeah, I love my Lydia JL.
I love it. Thank you so much, Danielle, once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.